Jake Tapper has traveled to Kieve. I don't think they cover domestic policy at all anymore. Like, never. It's all about Ukraine. Yes, this is a massive story. Russia is presiding over and perpetrating war crimes on a daily basis. It's, of course, worthy of coverage. We cover it extensively here. But you wouldn't know that there's anything else going on in the world if you were to tune into CNN. It's 24/7.
Yeah, it's simultaneously, it's a big story, but also it's a big story that is one that is useful for the corporate partners of CNN to emphasize, because it's going to be a lot of contracts for military industrial stuff.
And it's also just action. You know, you get this,
right.
And plus, I mean,
and there's a bad guy too that isn't us, right?
Right.
There's action in Yemen, but that's not, you know, fun to frame.
And they're brown people or the victims. It's not as interesting. And also, and two, like, before we get to the clip as well, I heard on CNN the other day, they were describing intricately the use of Russian bombs that they might be called nail bombs, but essentially shrapnel comes out and it's designed to kill as many people as possible. That's unique to Russia, apparently. It's unique to Russia, apparently. I was unaware of that. But so, like, this is just constantly on people's television screens, and Jake Tapper has traveled to Kieve to report on this from the ground. Here he is speaking to Jake Sullivan, asking him a question about how the United States should respond and what's next, essentially. Are we going to intervene militarily? Here he is.
Because I'm not advocating for any specific action one way or another, but I do have to wonder how the international community, including the U.S., decides what kind of wholesale killing necessitates direct military intervention.
Pause it.
And what kind...
Okay, sorry. Now, actually, just keep going and pause it briefly after that.
Doesn't.
Right.
Because every year on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I read these statements from world leaders that say never again. What exactly are they saying never again to?
Can you pause it now? Okay, so I do have to wonder how the international community, including the U.S., decides what kind of wholesale killing necessitates direct military intervention and what kind doesn't. Historically, it's been what preserves the most amount of capital for the West and what exerts U.S. power and serves imperial interests best. Now, in this case, we are happy that Biden is showing restraint and understands that it doesn't serve any party to get involved in a war with a nuclear power. But the journalists that are leveraging the suffering of the Ukrainian people for more action don't really see it that way. But it's very serious of Tapper to make this claim, and he adds credibility to it by not zooming in, but doing his reporting on the ground in Kieve there, which he thinks, you know, gives him the legitimacy to make the kind of claim of like, there's been a lot of bloodshed, so why aren't we contributing to more?
Daniel Bessner talks a lot about this, and I don't think he's the only one to talk about it, but the sort of the Hollywoodification of World War II. The only lesson that America's foreign policy elites like to draw from World War II is that we should intervene militarily a lot faster, and not say like what were the economic conditions that led to the rise of someone like Hitler, and maybe we should do something to like make sure we're not going to recreate that sort of thing. But the only lesson, again, like that people like this like to emphasize Hitler, and you saw this a lot where people were talking about Islamofascism in the after the war, during the war in Iraq and stuff. It's like we invoke fascism as a way to like get the bombers started up and leaving their leaving the runways and go start dropping bombs. Like that's the only reason we invoke Hitler.
Yeah, and it also, when you use such an example, and we've seen other reporters, media members carelessly make the example of Putin to Hitler here. You understand the emotion that you're evoking from people or attempting to do so. It's literally the flip side of what Putin does when he talks about denazifying Ukraine.
It's symbiotic,
right? You are exploiting this mass tragedy that we all should have learned lessons from in order to create more bloodshed. So continue.
Holocaust Remembrance Day. I read these statements from world leaders that say never again. What exactly are they saying never again to?
Well, the United States and the international community are not going to stand by while Russia does what it does. And we haven't stood by. In fact, before this war even began, we indicated that Russia was planning to engage in acts of brutality against civilians. We declassified intelligence that this is not just the random acts of soldiers or units. This is an orchestrated plot from the Kremlin. And even before the war began, we flowed hundreds of millions of dollars of military equipment just last year to the Ukrainians to be able to defend themselves and to beat the Russians back. And we're continuing to do that. The speed, scale, scope of the effort to arm and equip the Ukrainians is unprecedented in recent memory, and it is something that the United States has led the effort to do. And the size and impact of the sanctions on a major economy like Russia is likewise unprecedented. So this is not a story of anyone standing by it. We are taking aggressive action in an effort to both help the Ukrainians succeed on the battlefield and help the Ukrainians have the best possible position at the negotiating table. We will continue to do that. We will continue to rally the world in that regard. And the United States will play the key role it has played thus far in the days and weeks ahead.
So that's the answer there.
Why doesn't that answer make them happy? Like, we're doing everything we can to get guns to these people in ways that's going to be least noticeable. What more do you want?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have some covert action on the ground as well.
Of course.
Yeah, and so, but the point is just that, again, it's Sam said this before. It's all about presenting oneself as like a very serious person. And look, being a journalist in Kieve right now, we've talked to Jack Crosby about this. I admire the bravery, and or not just in Kieve, in Ukraine, I should say. It's incredibly dangerous, and we've seen there's the Fox News videographer, other reporters that have died.
This is not that, though.
Yeah, but this is not that.
I mean,
right?
Sorry to cut you off, but there's a real sickness with cable, particularly, where you're spending millions and millions of dollars on these like Hollywood anchors, while you're hollowing out the foreign press offices of maybe you would have like 25 years ago. You would have CNN reporters just in Ukraine. And now if you look at the budgets for all this stuff,
remember when they didn't catch that Zelensky was being sarcastic?
Right, exactly.
Early on, because they don't have any foreign board, but then they get to put on their green outfit
and send our movie star over there.
Right, exactly.
That's all Jake Tapper is.
While he just recites his lines, probably fed to him, about how this is a moral crisis in terms of our lack of military intervention that we haven't seen since World War II. I mean. Besides the moral crises that we created in, say, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., since then, Vietnam, besides those.
I'm not advocating any position here, but I do have to wonder if you're not letting everyone who died in the Holocaust down a second time by not just starting to bomb Putin in that column right now.
Yeah, George Shultz. I mean, where are you on this? We need him to work on behalf of the State Department to invoke the Holocaust in a bizarre way.